Welcome to Where Are They Now with Aortic Hope. Where Are They Now is a new initiative that is geared towards sharing updates from prior individuals featured in our Survivor series. I'm your host, Greg Aaron Greenberg, and joining us today is dissection survivor and a new face on AHTV, Joel D. Amos. Hey, Joel, how you doing today?
I'm doing really good today. How are you doing, Greg?
I'm not doing too bad. Okay, so we did originally a Survivor Series video with you, and that covered, and the link, you can find the link to that below, and that covered pretty much what your dissection event was. But can you give us a brief little backstory about the event and like your initial recovery from dissection?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for having me. Second of all, I flew to New Orleans. I'm a movie journalist, so I was going to a set visit. And I like to say that if Regina King and Morris Chestnut hadn't made this movie, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. Because I happened to fly to New Orleans about an hour after I checked in my hotel. I had a pain in my chest. It felt like Jackie Chan had kicked me about 16 times. I fell to the floor. I had no feeling in my legs, crawled over to the telephone, called for help. Got rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. They knew it wasn't a heart attack. Luckily for me, I had an EMT who was sharp as a tack. So as soon as I got there, they got me into a CT. They saw what it was. And at first, they thought it was a blood clot in my lung. So they put me on blood thinners. And I'll never forget, the surgeon came running in and almost literally ripped the IV out of my arm, saying, "You do not want to thin the blood of this guy. We need to get him up to the OR ASAP. You have had an aortic dissection. Here's your telephone. Call your wife and your 1.5-year-old daughter and say goodbye, because very few of you survive this. But I am one of the best at doing this." And sure enough, he was one of the best. I woke up after 9 hours surgery, spent a spat in the New Orleans hospital of Tulane with a great view of the Superdome with all its history, which kind of kept me slightly entertained. And then I was in there for about 10, 15 days. I wasn't cleared to travel for another week, so I got a room in a hotel. My family came to take care of me. Came home and started the road to recovery.
Wow, that's got to be a unique perspective because you were out of town when it happened and away from your family.
Yeah, and what I think is really funny, and I think people should know this not more than anything, but this is important. Is my first reaction is I don't feel so good. I know things aren't right. My legs are like wet spaghetti. I can't walk. Let's take a nap and then see how I feel when I wake up. No, no, don't take a nap. Call 911. If your legs aren't working and you have chest pains, there's something seriously wrong with you. But I was this close to just getting into bed, taking a nap. I was like, well, maybe I hadn't had enough coffee today. It's crazy what goes through your mind when something happens that is completely foreign to you.
You can find a way to rationalize anything
Exactly.
at that point. And especially, I mean, how old were you when you dissected?
40, 45.
45. Okay, yeah.
No, wait, 46. 46.
Yeah, so I was 38, and the last thing I was ever expecting. And
Right.
it's only because everything happened so tragically that I was able, like, it was so extreme that, like, I couldn't talk myself out of not calling 911. But you're right. Initially, when I wasn't quite feeling right initially, I was going to jump in a shower and then go to sleep. And it was only because things went
Yeah.
wrong in the shower that I was like, time out, we need to go.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It's
did you?
really,
Yeah,
well,
go ahead.
what another image in my head too, I mean, is a room full of firefighters, because they got there before the EMTs. And even though they've got a bit of medical training to first aid to handle situations they come upon. Man, I have never seen a more serious group of people in my life just staring at me, and just telling me, don't drink water, don't do this. And that's when I kind of knew. I was like, this is kind of serious.
Yeah. I
Because
might be in trouble here.
yeah, I mean, I'm making jokes to these guys. I had a book next to my foot that I was going to read my daughter on FaceTime. And I said, trust me, guys, my reading level is a little higher than the book that's right there. I have a kid at home, and nobody laughed and they weren't finding anything funny. And I was like, okay, I think this is bad. I think this is bad. Yeah,
I may not be the funniest person, but this should land somewhat.
it
Instead,
should.
you're just seeing a serious face back at you.
10
Yeah.
grown men, several should be fathers. That's a joke, I think, would land 99 times out of 100. And it was crickets. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to shut up now and wait for the EMTs. Um, but it was interesting. They wouldn't let me fly until the surgeon had cleared me. So that's why I had to stay in New Orleans for an extra week.
Which makes
Um,
sense. And that's important to know because in our community, for those that are staring at one, there are a lot of people that travel to see doctors in different cities
right,
or that might go to a different hospital or going to somebody, say, at Cleveland Clinic or Hopkins, and they're seeing a specific doctor, that you should know that that is the case. A lot of times they're not going to clear you to fly until the
right,
doctor sees you that 2 weeks or whatever post-op and gives you that clean bill of health to then travel again back.
right. Well, it was funny, little quick funny note. When I was stuck in the hotel, I mean, I'd never been to New Orleans. It's been a lifelong dream. My parents gave me money when I was in college to get a ticket to go visit a buddy who was at Tulane. And being a typical 20-year-old, I spent it on beer and never bought the ticket, never got to New Orleans. And here I was, first time in New Orleans. And not only was in New Orleans, I was in New Orleans on St. Patrick's Day.
Right.
And fate had another plan for me. And that's how it is. And so I like to think of it as lucky because I live in Los Angeles and I got some really great care from the Aortic Center at UCLA. But at first, I was at a myriad of different doctors. And I actually had a doctor at UCLA tell me that the hospital near my house, I won't name names, but the hospital near my house wouldn't have known that it was a dissection and I would have died. So I I thank the sky above that I was on a set visit in New Orleans with a guy who knew exactly what was going on.
People don't realize that. I mean, time's a factor. So if you can actually end up at a hospital where they can address the dissection, that saves time. So many of
Yeah,
us are transferred either by ambulance or by helicopter
right,
to a place that does. All you can truly hope for is that hopefully, no matter what, you get a good emergency room that
yes,
that can diagnose it. And then
right,
at least they give you the best shot of stabilizing you quickly and then preparing you for transfer if you need to be.
right. And like I said, I mean, the EMT, they ran an EKG, they did all this stuff, and I arrived at the hospital with this sentiment. She said, "You have not had a heart attack, but there is something seriously wrong with your heart." And I just feel like that sent me on the road to being able to beat this, arriving with a leg up, I guess you could say.
Yeah. No, I mean that's one of the most important things. Okay, so you've had this situation, you fly back to Los Angeles. Did you go through any sort of cardiac rehab or PT?
No, and that's what's interesting about my story. It's almost like a tale of two open heart surgeries because 14 months later, they discovered a 6 centimeter aneurysm in my other aorta, which needed operation, not emergency, but pretty darn soon. But that was about a year and 2 months later. But in that meantime, I had doctors who did not know what they were dealing with. My surgeon said I need a CT scan every 6 months. I need to go to cardiac rehab. My doctor in LA, I mean, it's big city. You think great doctors. He didn't see the point of the CT scan. And so he sure as heck didn't see the point of cardiac rehab. So I didn't have cardiac rehab. I dove into the internet. I discovered myself what I was supposed to do. I changed my diet. I changed my way of life. I lost like 70 pounds. Not that my weight had anything to do with the dissection, but it was just a general I got to take care of myself because clearly the doctors I have don't know what I'm talking about.
It's time to
And
look at lifestyle choices a little bit.
right. And so I feel, again, lucky. My insurance changed and my doctor wasn't on that plan. So I signed up with a doctor who actually, when she heard what had happened to me, she immediately sent me for a CT scan because it had been 7 months. And it was that CT scan that revealed the aneurysm. So I was walking around with a 6 centimeter aneurysm and a set of doctors that would have had no idea that that thing was going to burst one day. So again, I thank the insurance company for being absolute jerks and kicking me off because it got me a new insurance company that sent me to a doctor who knew also how to manipulate the system. She sent me to the ER at UCLA, knowing that they had the aortic center there. So by going to the ER at UCLA and complaining of chest pains, I was already taken care of. So that,
Yeah.
and what's fascinating is that doctor, those surgeons wanted cardiac rehab. And it was phenomenal cardiac rehab. I cannot, I mean, of course, it's the UCLA Aortic Center. You would expect that. But would you believe they even had a psychiatrist on staff? And as part of your cardiac, that's huge. That is so huge. And she helped me realize a whole lot of things about a lot of things because, I mean, I didn't think I had PTSD. I mean, I did, but I didn't necessarily know it. And through talking to her once a week, that was part of the rehab, I discovered a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, you just beat me to the punch because that was my next question is, did you have experience with PTSD, either like right post
Yeah,
or do you still struggle to this day? A lot of us still struggle.
to this day.
I still have nightmares to this day. So you is to the day. How does it hit you? What affected you?
It's interesting.
Sound?
It's sound. And obviously, I moved to Spokane, Washington, where I am now, which is a much quieter way of life, a cheaper way of life. But living in Los Angeles, the sound of a siren was a horror show for me. I mean, that just took me right back to sitting in that ambulance racing to the hospital with two EMT people who also could not be more serious as those firemen were. So, and still, I mean, in Spokane, we don't really hear ambulances all that much or sirens all that much, but that rare moment that a siren goes by, oh boy, the hair on the back of my head stands up, and I go there. And it's interesting you ask. I mean, I have a lot of tools. I've seen people. I have an app for PTSD that helps for various different triggers. Um, and that has been very, very helpful, as has been a therapist. What's fascinating is my aortiversary. I just celebrated my 6th one this week, and it's always been a day of joy. But this year it wasn't. This year it wasn't. This year was very, very hard. I was extremely despondent, depressed. I broke down several times. And I think just the reality of what happened. And I like to think also because there's a question that goes through my mind sometimes, and maybe this is part of PTSD. It's why me? And I don't mean like, why did it happen to me? Why did I survive? And so many died. And in this last year, obviously, we've lost over 500,000 Americans to COVID. And they all have kids, they all have families, and they're not here anymore. And I think this year, a couple days ago on my anniversary, it was just too much. I did not have a good day.
I was going to ask that. I was going to ask you if you thought, because when you're saying it, and you know, disclaimer, you and I have been friends for years now, um,
Right.
and have talked. I've never heard you not excited about your anniversary. This is actually the first that I realized that you did have your anniversary this past week. So congratulations on that. But
Oh, thank you.
I've spoken to you other times.
Yeah.
There was an excitement. And I wonder how much of what you were feeling this particular year is directly tied into COVID and this pandemic and
Um,
how isolated we all feel. I mean, it's
yeah,
all
I think a lot. I think a lot. This year has been really tough. I mean, when a year ago, when you know what hit the fan and we shut down, and in the days since, I know that because of my pre-existing conditions, I have a 6 centimeter aneurysm in my abdominal aorta that we're just waiting on to operate. I know that if I got COVID, I could be one of those people. And when I think it was about month 3 or 4, they discovered that some people with COVID, it attacks their vascular system. And oh boy, I was like, oh great. So I mean, I really haven't left the house. I mean, I'll get in the car and go for a drive maybe, but pick up groceries curbside, contact less. But like I have not been out of the house, and also as a father, it's kind of painful because I have a 7-year-old girl, and because of me, she can't go back to school, so she's doing virtual school, and I hope she can go back in the fall. I think she can, but I'm just thinking about everything that she misses out on, and it's all kind of my fault because of my situation. That aortiversary just was not a good day. I felt terrible, and I do think it was a lot to do with COVID, the isolation. Um, I mean, there is an upside. I have been reaching out to friends from college that I have been out of touch with, and that has really lifted spirits. Uh, Usually when I really need it. I mean, I just had a Zoom meeting, I think 2 nights ago with 9 of them, and I haven't laughed that much even at a great comedy. And I review movies, so I see like all the comedies. And that was, as they say, that was good for the heart. That was really good for the heart. So I think the key to this isolation until it is safe for us all to go out, which is still, I think, a couple months away at least, is to connect with people. And that's kind of what we do here with Aortic Hope and other like groups, that I think is key to keeping spirits up because it's easy to go down that rabbit hole.
yeah, no, I agree with you completely. And also, like you said, you review movies, so a very big part of your life was going to the movie theater and catching these films in a movie theater experience and then being able to write about it. So I'm sure that that's a change for you as well.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, I've been lucky because the studio's adjusted and I get a lot of links at home, so I can watch things at home, which is nice. But I never realized just the act of getting out of the house, sitting with a group of other people in the dark, sharing the experience that is a movie, whether it's scary or funny or thrilling. I didn't realize how much I missed that, and that is missing. That is definitely missing. I mean, I don't. We just moved here a couple of years ago. We don't have like a whole ton of friends. Not that I could see them because of COVID, but just the act of leaving the house once, twice, 3 times a week to go to the movies was enough to fulfill me in that part of my brain and emotion, and that's just gone,
Yeah,
for
I mean,
now.
that's yeah for now. Exactly. And like you said, they've updated you, but the most important thing is you're able to still do what you did as far as
Yes.
viewing the movie. So I mean, it wasn't like everything abrupt stopped. The studios adjusted. They got you links to stuff. You could do what you do, and uh,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing. Now, bringing that up, since you are somebody that does writing, do you experience Pubhead?
What do you mean by that?
Do you have any focus
Uh,
or you have any struggles with, aphasia, like finding a word, any of what like would affect memory, or like that a lot of people in our community complain about the traditional idea of pump it.
Yeah, I do. I do. I I I find also that the motivation is hard too. And I'm sitting staring at a blank screen, and I don't know why. I mean, I love what I do. This is a dream. Other than writing screenplays, which we've talked about, and seeing those maybe one day make it to the big screen. Writing about movies as a reviewer and a journalist, and interviewing directors and stars and stuff. I mean, that's the dream. But there's still days where I sit and just stare at the computer, and I just don't really feel like doing anything. And it just feels like an enormous mountain to climb to what used to just be a walk.
Right. It used to come easy. It was it was a love. And now all
Right.
of a sudden you sit down and you're struggling to find where to start.
Right.
And that struggle is difficult. It
I
it
will,
actually it saps some of the joy out of what you're doing
I'll put,
because
yeah, I'll put it this way. When I ran my own site at the time that was called Movie Fanatic, it had since gone under, but I was the only writer, and I had in with the studios. I lived in LA. Um, every day I would put out 10 to 12 articles, including, reviews, interviews, trailer news, all this. I mean, I was a machine. Um, some may say that maybe that contributed to what happened to me. I don't necessarily think so. Um, but studies will figure that out one day. Um, but now I'm lucky if I can write and complete a review in one day. And I used to write 12 articles a day, easy, including listicles, what they call listicles, like, the top 11 Brad Pitt movies. And then, I mean, I used to churn those out like it was effortless. And yeah, maybe I worked 9, 10 hours a day, but I didn't struggle. And now I allot for that time because I'm also not supposed to work very much. And I can see why, because I get exhausted. And most importantly, it's hard to come from here to here to write what I want to say. The editing process, I think, takes longer now because I can find better words that I used when I first wrote. And I've learned the writer's credo about, write when you're hot and edit when you're cold. So if I'm feeling it, I'm writing. And if I'm not feeling it, I try to bring up something that I'm working on. I mean, I used to write 3, 4 reviews on a Thursday night so they're ready to go Friday morning. Now I have to plan it and start earlier in the week and kind of work on it all week so that I could do the same thing I used to do before so that my readers can see my reviews on Friday morning. And there's actually many, many weeks where the review doesn't even get up till Friday afternoon because I can't do it like I used to.
well, I think especially since I mean the time I understand what you're saying. The timing is what you're used to, is getting it up first thing Friday morning. But I think now with the fact that people are not in the theaters as much, that we can give you a little bit of a break on the fact that it gets up on Friday afternoon.
Yeah, that's been my attitude too.
By most people are not waking up at 6 a.m. to stream something.
Right,
Uh,
exactly.
but in the old days, they might go to work and decide whether or not they were going to make their plans.
Yep.
And okay, let's pick a time of what time that we're going to go see this movie at 8. Okay, let's go at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. So they might appreciate your review first thing in the morning. Now
Exactly.
I think it's they get home. Okay, what are we going to watch? Oh, Joel just reviewed this. Let's check out Joel's review. And it gets to the point. So I don't know if the time. I understand what you're saying. It feels different for you. I don't think the time
No, and
affects affects us as your reader as much as it
yeah,
like you think it affects you as a writer.
and
Uh,
it's taken a few months to realize that, but it was a great realization because it just took off a lot of pressure from me. Just that people aren't really thinking about what they're going to watch on Friday night. Nowadays, probably not until late Friday afternoon, maybe even Friday night. So yeah, I've allowed myself that leeway, and I know that now things are different. Just things are different, and I know you and I have talked about this a lot. That you said something once that really helped. That it was Greg 2.0, and how one day I woke up and I realized, like, I need to stop being the original Joel. I'm not. I am Joel 2.0, and things are different, and I need to plan accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, I always say you're absolutely right. I chime out that Greg 2.0 all the time because things are not the same.
Right.
There might be 90% because my personality is still my personality.
Right.
Yeah, but there's a different aspect and different layers to everything. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that resonated with you. I'm glad that it helped you at all, and it's an important thing for everyone to realize.
And it's okay.
Somebody else is saying it rather than just me chiming out my 2.0 idea. That things, you have to forgive yourself a little bit that you are not the exact same person you were before your thing.
And I will say, my aortiversary the other day, there was a sense of mourning too, that comes along with that person is gone. And I think it really hit me this year that things are different, and they will be different for the very foreseeable future.
I think definitely, I think for those of us with a chronic illness, I think that this whole situation of what we're dealing with now is it's scary.
Yeah.
I didn't fight so that I could succumb to a respiratory illness.
Right.
I didn't get through everything I've been through so that someone could come home with, and I'm not making light of it, but like the equivalent of a sniffle and a little bit of a sore throat. And now all of a sudden I can't breathe and I'm fighting for my life.
Right.
A week later, all over again.
Well, it's also like, not that I was a regular at the ER, but I've gone to the ER quite a bit since my two open hearts. And because you never know. And every time they go, they look at my history and they say, I'm glad you're here. The next time it happens, come in again.
Yeah.
But I will say, since COVID, I have only gone to the ER maybe once for something. And I asked myself, is it worth potentially catching COVID if, something isn't quite right? Like, I also get blood clots. So I was getting like little blood clots in my legs. And then I read that some people who get COVID have blood clots. So I'm like, oh my God. And so I went to the hospital and they're like, no, you're fine. But it's now something I think about. I mean, I think about whether I should go to the hospital or not, because is it worth it?
And to be honest with you, it shouldn't be something we think about,
No.
because my message to everybody in the AOR community is, if you think you need to go to the hospital, go to the hospital.
Go to the hospital.
There shouldn't be any question, even in COVID. I mean, right now, it's a lot easier to make that decision. But you're absolutely, because we know now how the hospitals are handling it.
Yes.
And that ERs are separate and they're this. But you're right. In the first like 6 months of everything COVID, nobody, I mean, if you look at the statistics, they're still showing there are a higher amount of cardiac deaths that are being discovered that people died at home because people are still not going to the hospital for fear of catching.
Right.
And I can assure you, as somebody that had heart surgery during
COVID,
this COVID era, that they are, and obviously had an emergency room trip before that, they're doing everything. Like, there might not be a safer place for you
Right.
not to get. I mean, it's obviously it can be there, but everything is so, especially for us as cardiac patients, everything is so isolated to every different area in the hospital right now that the chances that it spreads like that. So if you have,
And
I understand if you don't want to run to the hospital for fear, but I would implore you to give
yeah.
that serious thought and to go.
And I also noticed that the second you mentioned that you have something cardiac, they kind of push you to the front of the line. So it's not like you're sitting in the ER for 3 hours with people coughing in your face or whatever. So, I mean, yes, it is. The ER is A-OK right now.
Yeah, and that is another thing that I will hammer out for anybody that's watching us in our community. It's this simple. You need to discuss your medical history the second you arrive at triage, because it is do not pass go. You will get a CT. You will get the imaging that you need. They don't mess around. There's
Nope.
no reason. There's no reason if you have a history of an intact aneurysm that they don't know that right away. You do not allow them to miss the diagnosis
Right.
of an aortic
Exactly.
infection. So that's especially for. I mean, obviously, if I'm talking to you and you're a member of this aortic community, you've already been diagnosed. You need to make sure that they know that.
Yes.
And for anybody that doesn't, you need to really hammer out, or if you have anywhere a sudden cardiac death in your family history, you need to let them know, because it changes the whole diagnostic perspective for them.
Yeah. And I've noticed that I go to the same hospital, the same ER all the time because it's in the records and I know they have everything. I just walk in the door and I say, my name's Joel Amos. And they're like, go over there, you're going to get treated. And, as, not to go to the front of the line, but that's the way it should be.
No, it's absolutely it's this simple. If you're somebody, and they get to know you too. I mean, they have that idea of the frequent flyers for whatever reason and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But they know, like, if you're showing up, there's a reason why you're showing up. So
Yep.
let's double check that. It was like that for me when I went back in October, and it was quick CT, and they found something and transferred
And
me to the Gainesville hospital, and we moved
we're off.
there.
Yeah. We're off and running. Well, not running.
So how, before this year, because you said obviously this year was a rough one.
Yeah.
Did you celebrate your previous aortiversaries? Did you do anything special?
Yeah. Yeah, we went out to eat when we were allowed to go out to eat. We did that. I also yearly write on Facebook to my friends and other social media, and I'm a writer. I can't help it. That's how I express myself. I write out. It's probably like a page, and it may seem like a long post on Facebook, but I always get the most amazing responses, hundreds of likes and comments. We're so glad you're here, and I try to be very uplifting and hug your friends and your family. You don't know when you're not going to be here anymore, and other things like that. I try to do, and this year was a little bit different because hug your friends and family. You can't do that. So this year's post was a little bit different, but in the past, the last 5 years, it's been very celebratory, and very appreciative. And I find new reasons. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I asked, why was I saved? I mean, for a long time, it was to be there for my little girl. And now, just the other day, I asked her, we were making a little video just for fun. And I was interviewing her and I said, what's your favorite thing in the world to do? And she said, play with daddy. I mean, if that doesn't just knock you out, I don't know what does.
That's got to melt your heart completely.
Completely. That completely melted the heart. And I said, what's your favorite food in the world? And she said, Daddy's burgers. And so clearly, in the last 6 years, I've been there for my daughter like I felt like I should be. And of course, I'm home all the time. So that helps. But you know, each year you can find a different reason why, and sometimes you don't even need to ask that question. You know, you were saved, and now you know go about your life and your business. But yeah, every anniversary of the initial dissection, I try to be as positive and as celebratory as possible, and I have been, and it's always been a glorious day, like a second birthday, you know. And I not as much, but I also celebrate the second open heart surgery on July 26th, because I, you know, if I hadn't gone to that doctor, that aneurysm would not have been found and I would not be here. So I don't see that anniversary any less. Although to celebrate a second anniversary during the year, it's not as pomp and circumstance because that was a planned surgery versus an emergency surgery. But I still mark the day a little bit.
Oh, you know what? I can understand that because as somebody that's only months removed,
Right.
like I have obviously given that thought. What would the planned surgery aortiversary look? But I don't know if it would, like you said, I don't think it carries the weight because it didn't carry the fight.
No, no, it
It,
didn't,
you
and
know,
that's okay.
yeah,
And
no, it's absolutely okay.
you know, it's a big difference
Not everybody
between,
wants to have to fight multiple times.
you know, there's a big difference than having your ribs sawed open versus, you know, doctors having the time to plan to go in other ways and waking up feeling a little better the second time than you did the first time. You still feel like garbage, but it's a different kind of garbage.
You're absolutely correct. It's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, we've covered a lot. If you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice when you were first post dissection recovery, what would it be?
Patience. Have patience, and also be at peace with the idea that your life has forever changed, that this is something that's going to be part of you for the rest of your life. Um, and that if your medical professionals aren't doing the job, find new ones. And as you're finding new ones, uh, be your own best advocate. You know,
So
I
it's
think
safe to
that's
say that if
probably
I
the
asked you what your advice for the community would be, what you just said hits it right on the right. Hits the nail
yeah,
right on the head.
yeah, yeah, easy, and go easy on yourself. You know, you're not the same person as you were. You are emotionally and you could be humorous or funny or whatever you are normally doing. You could still be that person. But things have changed a little bit, and you know what? Life is nothing but change all the way through. It's just how you respond to it. And um, I once had somebody, I was having trouble with somebody, and that it was that psychiatrist at cardiac rehab. And she told me something that I take to this day. It says, you're not going to change people. You're not going to change situations. You're not going to change what happened to you. And you're not going to change anything external. But what you can do is change how you deal with it. And I think that was one of the best pieces of advice I got after my dissection is it's on me to change how I deal with things that happen to me. And I think that's the key to being happy and most importantly, healthy.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's something that I've always said is that you need to forgive yourself. Um, you know, things are not going to be the same. It's not going to be perfect. Um, it's going to be a learning curve. Uh, but okay, so I would say for the most part, I think we pretty much covered everything. The one thing I will give you the opportunity to do is shamelessly plug your website, please, so that people know where they can find your reviews.
All right. Well, one of the fun things after coming back from New Orleans after that first dissection was 6 weeks later, my bosses decided to close the site. Loving movies and not knowing what I could do, my lovely wife suggested I start my own site and just review movies and do whatever. So I started the Movie Mensch. I worked very hard to find a good name, and since my mother and other Jewish relatives of mine have always called me a mensch, and I like alliterations, I thought the Movie Mensch was it. So themoviemensch.com is where my reviews are and articles and occasional interviews. And that's kind of what keeps me tethered to the past and what I used to do. And it's something that I enjoy. Of course, as I said earlier, it just takes longer to do things. Some things I just have to forget. There was a trailer that premiered the other day, and I started writing, and I was like, you know what? I don't need to put up this trailer because it's extra work. So I go easy on myself, but I still write good reviews. At least I like to think so. To help you decide what's out there, and occasionally I do some top tens and things like that as I feel well enough. So yes, themoviemensch.com is your new favorite movie site.
Yes, and you can find a link for that site below, below with the video. I will also now tease and make an announcement that we are bringing a show to AHTV here. And Joel, you will be co-hosting with me. And
Can't wait.
we're still flushing out ideas, but we are going to probably move forward with a review show as well as potentially a list show. So I know that you call them listicles
Right.
because of obviously crossing list and articles. I don't know really if there's a word for that for a video, but we will definitely be doing some sort of top 5 or top 10 together.
Yes.
Because it makes sense. Our both our love for movies and what your original background was,
And
and still,
yours.
and what you're doing now. Yes, in my film background to start. Not that I ever went the journalism route that you did, but the struggling actor route I definitely pulled off well. Although we will not talk about that.
No,
I'm sure that movie though will come up at some point in HTV. So
yes.
I will tease that for you at some point on one of the Joel and my HTV movie shows. You will get the actual title to the movie that I starred in and where to find it.
Yes.
I promise I'll give you that. But anyway, Joel, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Greg. It's good to see you, my friend.
It's good to see you, and we'll definitely be moving forward with our shows, which you should keep an eye out because it should probably start in a couple weeks here on HTV, and I'll tell you, don't forget to like and subscribe, and you will get all the notifications of all the videos that we do from this series, Where Are They Now, to our weekend reviews, to the new movie review show that Joel and I will be doing.
Yes.
I want to thank everybody for showing up today. And once again, Joel, thank you. And hopefully we'll see you soon.
All right. Be well, everyone.